Welcome to this presentation on the economy and work. This is Dr. Moore. People want their jobs to be meaningful. This means doing work that provides purpose and dignity, and not just economic rewards. For some, this means work that contributes to social welfare. Others are more interested in flexible working hours and more pragmatic issues relating to caring for their family and repaying student loans, and having work that contributes to one's personal well-being. Are we placing too much value on work and the material things that it makes possible? And what impact do long work weeks have on families, and through families, the welfare of society? Juliet Schor is the author of a book called The Overworked American, and in it she states, in the last 20 years, the amount of time Americans spend at their jobs has steadily increased. Now, according to her calculations, the average worker is on the job 1 month more per year than in 1969. This chapter presents a broad survey of the economy, which affects one's ability to find and keep meaningful work. We'll begin with an historical overview of changes to the economy caused by technological innovation. The second major focus is a comparative analysis of economic systems. Think of capitalism and socialism as two different claims about justice. That is, two different systems that provide answers to the question, who deserves what and why? Capitalism rests on the operation of a market system. Socialism rests on central government control of the economy. We'll continue with a look at key trends through an overview of the post-industrial U.S. economy. A couple of those key trends include the increasing share of the labor force in service work and large corporations accounting for a larger share of economic productivity. We'll discuss the importance of corporations to the U.S. economy. And we'll conclude by looking ahead. The economy will become increasingly global. And we'll consider how we may be moving toward a shorter work week. The economy is defined as the social institution that organizes a society's production, distribution, and consumption of goods and services. In this section of the text on social institutions, the economy is placed first, a decision that reflects the claim that of all institutions, the economy has the greatest effect on all the others. To some degree, this ordering reflects changes in the discipline of sociology itself. Back in the 1970s, the family was typically placed first in the ordering of social institutions, typically followed by religion. The first few editions of this textbook did so, and a number of current textbooks still do this. Massionis claims that the economy has a far greater effect on the family than the family does on the economy, and I agree. Therefore, dealing with economics and politics should come first, followed by the other institutions. Okay, let's move on to our brief historical overview of changes to the economy caused by technological innovation. Before the agricultural revolution, early societies were hunting and gathering societies that didn't have economies. Farming took place within the family. It wasn't until animals were used for agricultural development, about 5,000 years ago, that economies developed. Animal use for agriculture was significantly more productive than hunting and gathering. Food surpluses began developing, and not everyone had to produce food. Instead, they took on specialized roles, such as tool making and building homes. Towns then developed, and trade became important. The factors of agricultural technology, specialized work, and permanent homes and trade came together to make the economy a social institution. This was considered the agricultural revolution. The Industrial Revolution occurred in the mid-18th century. It started in England and spread throughout Europe and the U.S. This revolution brought us new sources of energy that did not rely on humans or animals. It focused on centralization of work in factories, manufacturing, and mass production, as well as the specialization of tasks, so workers did one thing as opposed to an entire project. Also, wage labor occurred. This meant few people now worked for themselves and instead worked for strangers. These changes led to an improvement in the standard of living, but working conditions were often dismal and dangerous. Even children worked for little wages. It wasn't until the 20th century, when laws banned child labor, set minimum wages, and improved workplace safety, that things changed. The third technological revolution is the information revolution, or post-industrial economy, and this is where the U.S. is positioned now. Post-industrial economies rely less on industrial work and more on service sector work. Computers are vital to this economy, allowing people to work from almost anywhere. Mechanical skills become less important than verbal and communication skills. It is important to keep in mind that we have an extensive and complex global economy. New information technology is drawing people from around the world closer together and creating a global economy. Recent decades have witnessed the emergence of the global economy, expanding economic activity with little regard for national borders. While global trade has always existed, our global economy differs today in that technological innovations in communications and shipping have made it possible to place orders, track inventory, and ship raw materials and manufactured goods across the globe quickly and cheaply. These innovations have contributed to creating a global economy where economic activity crosses national borders regularly. Most of the products Americans used to purchase were made in the U.S. Now, about half of all consumer items purchased in the United States are made outside of the country. U.S. imports reached $2 trillion in 2010. The things we buy now are more often than not made in China, India, Latin America, or other developing parts of the world. The development of a global economy has 5 major consequences. First, there is a global division of labor, by which each region of the world specializes in particular kinds of economic activity. We now have a global division of labor, where different regions come to specialize in one sector of economic activity, such as agriculture or service work. The world's poorest nations specialize in producing raw materials, and the richest nations specialize in the production of services. 2, an increasing number of products pass through the economies of more than one nation. Just consider the automobile, for example. Before it's manufactured or assembled in this country, various parts are made or distributed through other nations. 3, governments can no longer fully control the economic activity that takes place within their borders. 4, a small number of businesses control a vast share of the world's economic activities. And all of this raises concerns about the rights of workers. Nations like the U.S. lose jobs to people in lower income countries because workers in these countries do the jobs for less pay. So now the natural resources used to make cell phones, computers, clothing, furniture, and most manufactured products may come from a variety of countries. These resources are then shipped to the manufacturing company, where manufacturing costs are significantly cheaper because of cheaper labor, and in turn products are shipped for sale in the United States. Along with concerns over the low wages and working conditions for overseas workers and the loss of American jobs, which are consequences of globalization, is the existence of global inequality, which refers to the extent to which income and wealth is unevenly distributed among the world's population. Global financial institutions have been releasing data, and in 2010, the world's 1,210 billionaires hold a combined wealth that equals about half of the total wealth of the 3.5 billion adults around the world. Researchers note that there are 3 sectors of the economy. The primary sector is the part of the economy that draws raw materials from the natural environment. This includes agriculture, ranching, fishing, forestry, and mining. This sector is largest in low-income nations. Only 2% of the U.S. economy is in the primary sector. The secondary sector is the part of the economy that transforms raw materials into manufactured goods. For example, turning petroleum into gasoline. The tertiary sector is the part of the economy that involves services rather than goods. This sector has grown with industrialization, and approximately 77% of the U.S. labor force is in service work, which includes secretarial and clerical jobs and sales. You may have noticed that these sectors of the economy correspond to the three economic revolutions. The primary sector corresponds to the agricultural revolution. The secondary sector corresponds to the industrial revolution, and the tertiary sector corresponds to the post-industrial revolution. The two most heard about economic systems today are capitalism and socialism. Capitalism is an economic system in which natural resources and the means of producing goods and services are privately owned. Under capitalism, there's private ownership of property, which includes factories, real estate, and natural resources. There's an emphasis on the pursuit of personal profit and a stress on competition and consumer choice. While the U.S. is considered capitalist, it's not purely capitalist because the government plays a large role in the economy. Government owns and operates businesses such as schools, roads and parks, taxing what companies produce, and providing income in the form of student loans and Social Security. In contrast, socialism is an economic system in which natural resources and the means of producing goods and services are collectively owned. In pure socialist systems, there's a collective ownership of property and the pursuit of collective goals. Central government controls the economy with little to no commercial advertising. Under socialism, the goal is to meet the needs of everyone in society rather than to compete to gain wealth. Countries like Venezuela, Bolivia, Ecuador, and Cuba have socialist economies or are moving toward socialist economies. There are, as expected, advantages and disadvantages of each system. While capitalist systems tend to outproduce socialist systems in terms of goods and services, there's far less economic equality in capitalist systems. Capitalist economies support a higher standard of living, but there's also greater income and inequality. In socialism, the state regulates the economy, which limits personal choices and opportunities. Now, most countries have both capitalist and socialist elements and conditions, and these conditions are always changing. The largest socialist country in the world, China, has become the largest manufacturer of goods sold in capitalist countries. Even with China's impressive level of productivity, we can summarize the advantages of capitalism and socialism in this manner. Capitalist societies are more economically productive overall. Socialist societies display considerably less income and wealth disparity. Statistics alone are not enough to compare overall well-being in either system. And capitalist countries are characterized by more civil liberties and political freedom. If we take a look at the changing pattern of work in the post-industrial U.S. economy, we'll notice some key trends. In just a brief analysis of patterns of employment in the United States, we'll notice first there's been a sharp decline in agricultural work. The family farms of yesterday have been replaced by corporate agribusinesses. There's been a shift from factory work to service work. Many jobs in this post-industrial era provide only a modest standard of living. Consequently, we now have a dual labor market. The primary labor market includes jobs that provide extensive benefits to workers. The secondary labor market includes jobs that provide minimal benefits to workers. Since 1950, the post-industrial revolution has dramatically transformed U.S. society. There's been a shift from producing tangible products to producing ideas. There's also been a shift from mechanical skills to literacy skills. and jobs have moved from factories to almost anywhere. When I overlay a graph, you can more clearly see these key trends that we just talked about. This graph shows the percentage of the total labor force in various occupations. The orange line shows the dramatic increase in white-collar or service-oriented jobs. The blue line shows the blue-collar jobs decreasing, and the green line clearly demonstrates the drop-off of agricultural jobs. What is the role of corporations in the economy? At the core of today's capitalist economy lies the corporation, an organization with a legal existence, including rights and liabilities, apart from those of their members. The corporate economy is highly concentrated, with a few large firms holding most of the assets and earning most of the profits. Are they competitive? The competitive sector of the U.S. economy is mostly limited to small businesses. Large corporations are considered part of the non-competitive sector. GM, Ford, and Chrysler would probably disagree that the corporate world lacks competition. They have seen their U.S. market share slide to less than half of all auto sales in recent decades, in the face of rising competition from Japan and Korea. A couple of terms you should be familiar with. Monopoly is a term that refers to the illegal domination of a market by a single producer. Oligopoly is the domination of a market by a few producers, and it is common. The federal government tries to regulate corporations in order to protect the public interest. Corporations are heavily involved in the global economy. Corporations are now responsible for most of the world's economic output, and corporations now view the entire world as one vast marketplace. In conclusion, we've taken a look at the economy, one of society's social institutions. As we look ahead, in the new century, the economy will become increasingly global. The economic future of the United States and other nations will occur on a global playing field. One thing to think about is whether we might be moving toward a shorter work week. The reasons for the long-term increase in work hours and in the work week that I mentioned at the beginning are many and varied. For one thing, the share of women in the labor force continues to increase, and more women are taking jobs that demand long hours, such as management and professional work. Economic insecurity is also driving more families to work longer and harder. The easing of this trend appears to be linked to the aging of the labor force. The median age of U.S. workers continues to increase to more than 40 years, and a larger share of the labor force is now older than 60, a time at which many people try to slow down. And as explained in a previous chapter, a rising value in our society and in our way of life is leisure. As a result, more people are focused on getting the job done and not necessarily working 60 hours a week.